Shabbat Shalom. We are taking a look at Northeast IPR and Pittsburgh IPR projects. Today it's supposed to be 78, 80 degrees. The last time I was out there, the ground was still a little bit soggy. It was the day after Easter. What was Easter Day like? I think it was wet, but like we did have some nice sun. But then pretty much right after the nice weather, and I think it was the day after Easter, or maybe it snowed on Easter. Okay, I don't exactly remember, but it was nice weather, and then the next day it was all coming down. And then I went out the day after all the snow, which might have been Easter, depending on what universe you're occupying at the moment. And it was still sunny enough when I went out to be drying the ground, but it was not completely dry ground. We have a nice variety of partly broken chairs. We have the garden beds, which have not yet been touched. We have our space show organizing that I think is taking a break today to recover from some supply gap situations. I should certainly mention that there are shoes for broken feet to be ordered. We say this in a variety of ways, but it's a pretty important item if you might be able to help. Reach out to me, Max Morris, on Telegram Messenger. This and the primary smartphone device that I use to run the network now does not work the same way it did before. The details a bit too complicated for me to verbalize right now, but we put up a written piece to direct people how to support repair efforts. More information, t.me/intuitive public radio, or message me directly, Max Morris, on Telegram Messenger. I can receive emails. My ability to send emails ebbs and flows. My email address is max@intuitive.pub. And if someone emails me, I always hope that they'll realize that for me to be able to respond, it would be so neat if they sent me a telegram instead, but not everyone can. I'm in a lot of physical pain. I'm gonna rest after I record this video. I have plans for some nutritive discussion and music making. We have a lot of different group projects that are centered at this location and collaborating non-locally with the international network. If I start trying to list them, I will be listing for a long time. Relationality and rationality. That's a note that my eyes find on the page, and I don't want to pass by it without speaking it. Relationality and rationality. It's an intersection of a lot of very important subjects. What we have been publishing at Pittsburgh IPR on Telegram Messenger and at Northeast IPR on Telegram Messenger have been really limited. reference points to the various things that different groups are working on. And my striving to verbalize better what all of that is has just been, I mean, I can put so much energy into it, but sometimes eventually it's just a scramble and I have to back off and stop trying for a while. But there's so much to be expressed. And there are so many people really present and willing to work together on what is needed. And our situation, what created Intuitive Public Radio in the first place, was that with all of these willing, heart-centered, courageous, compassionate people, still we can't understand one another, or we don't know one another is there. Still we're isolated from one another. And that's the subject at hand. Most of the other subjects we thought were the subject at hand were a misunderstanding of how compromised are our collective communications. We have to really pay attention to what has been done and is being done to collective communications if we want to have a clear sense of how to plan together what do we do next. Because most of the groups that have become Intuitive Public Radio, the Intuitive Community Network, we thought there was no one there. That was part of the point. Trafficking organizations can demoralize you very effectively if the evidence you can reach tells you there isn't anyone who's going to believe you or help you. Knowing that our communications are affected in these ways, knowing that it's not just like, how do we talk to one another? It's also, how do our bodies understand things? How does my body feel a feeling in response to a circumstance of my environment? How does my body receive signals and interpret them? How does my body send signals to have exchanges of signals with other bodies? The ways that all of this happens are mediated through environments made of all of us as living beings. If we're going to allow the poisoning of our environments, the denaturation of our oxygen supply, I could keep listing, but my head hurts too much. If we're going to let that go on, it's crucially important to recognize that everything in the world, our entire physiology, is communications compromised. So we can't deliver signals as reliably as we thought. We can't deliver nutrients as reliably as we thought. We can't detoxify the bad stuff as reliably as we thought, because the pathways have been all co-opted, and we have to do what turns out to be a whole bunch of extra work to identify which pathways are safe to be engaged, if there are any, and which pathways present perils that we've been misled about intentionally so that we would fall into one particular form of entrapment or another. We're watching that occur, but we have such an improved frame to understand it now that we're speaking more of the network languaging. Oh, my head hurts. My goodness. Wow, my head really hurts. One of the things we've been discussing a lot lately is that everyone really needs friends. one of the things about this compromised communications landscape is that the relationality that we all have access to has really changed or gone missing. How do you have a relationship with another living being? How do you learn how to respect a particular other living being? How do you find a sense of belonging? How do you find others that you feel comfortable and relaxed with, so that you don't have to always be on the alert for something potentially traumatic? How do we build the thriving multi-generational family environments that we crave? How can we ensure that the families we build will be safe? How do we make friends in these kinds of situations? What you discover as you learn more is all of the different kinds of friendship-based trafficking co-optation. I'll be your friend. Do you need help with something? I'll be your friend. All you have to do is... So how do we build better conceptualizations of friendship and family and community based in respectful, honorable relationships? We have to throw those words in over and over. We don't want to have to say that. We want to say a relationship. We should expect a relationship to be a respectful one, but of course not all relationships are respectful ones. Can a relationship be both respectful and honorable? Can it? You think it's overkill using both the words respectful and honorable in front of the word relationship to try to establish a litmus for clarity on what? Oh, my head. You can listen to me blow my nose. What a privilege. Oh. I have some theories about why my head hurts. There are a number of possible vectors. A lot of other things have been going very well. The shoe situation and the disability aid device repair situation are pretty big situations. But mostly, we find we don't get to celebrate enough all of the other things that are happening, because it's so important for us to keep certain items in active, conscious, verbalizable brain space. Because if I lose the ability to verbalize particular items, any pleasant state of being that I find is not going to last very long. I will be very confused and upset when it suddenly ends in a violent way because I did not sufficiently get my needs met. So a really interesting part of all of this is where survivors of these particular intersections, very deeply and extensively associated with human trafficking networks, we usually have a huge list of major needs, resources, solutions to address common day-to-day life-threatening situations that when we bring it up, other people are like, oh, well, wow. And then they go and they do the rest of their thing, not realizing that although they're not able to really understand the situation that we are expressing about, when we say this is a really crucial situation to resolve for the safety of the living beings in our communities, it affects all of us. But it's very difficult when people are under such stress, and the intersectional controls are clamping down on everybody. And when you start becoming familiar with that kind of documentation, then you start to see it everywhere, and you realize that when we're all expressing needs, and there are a lot of people who are learning this now, in circumstances of increasing disability and increasing severe disability, when people don't hear or respond, you may think that it's one kind of thing, and it turns out to be a totally different thing. And that is also very, very common, where we have had to get ultra circumspect about how to navigate these communication circumstances, where for the very survival of a community, you would expect a community would respond when certain situations are occurring, and that's not what happens. And I use this really vague languaging because so many people are experiencing this in really widely varying ways. And what we have to do is focus on tuning in to more clarity in our communications, so that we notice if somebody says something that's a really serious statement or request and completely goes unacknowledged. That is not just about a particular relationship or a particular group or a particular individual. That's about the compromised communications collectively, interstitially. We need to be aware that that's what's happening when people try to communicate. If we're not aware of that, we create so many more problems trying to solve the ones we are working with already. We don't want to create problems. We want to relieve them and really feel the relief and get to celebrate it. There are a bunch of other things I want to say, but I think I should give my head a break. Today is 8 dog. The Magadim Mayim Chayim are speaking, and we are definitely listening. Blessings to nourishment and waters flowing.